3.4 Exercise Behaviours by Aaron Sparrowhawk. Today we'll be looking at the three theories. One will be the trend theoretical model of behaviour change, the second will be the health belief model, and thirdly would be the theory of planned behaviour. The first theory is the trend theoretical model. This theory basically goes in 5 stages. The first stage is pre-contemplation, which means a person or somebody isn't thinking of making a change and isn't considering it and hasn't thought about it. Then some people may find a reason to make a change, and that will lead to the second stage, which is contemplation, which means they're kind of weighing up the barriers of negatives and advantages of these things. The next stage would be preparation and planning on how to take action and how to make the change. The next stage would be to make the change and to take action to it. For example, quitting smoking by smoking one less cigarette a day, for example. And finally, the last stage is how to maintain the change to prevent a relapse, which is obviously going back to where you started. So that's pretty much basically the trend theoretical model of behaviour change. The health belief model is a bit different. This theory involves factors that involve someone's decision to engage in a change or behaviour. These factors include weighing up benefits and barriers again of the change, the threat of not changing and what damage this will cause. A cue of action can also be involved, which is something more personal to do with the individual. For example, a family member may be suffering due to not making the same change that they could change. And finally is the self-efficiency, which is pretty much self-belief and making sure that they can do it personally they can do it as an individual. Finally, this is a theory of planned behaviour. This is a theory that if somebody is planning out, the better chance the change is going to happen. Many set a goal with no plan or preparation and fail, whereas planning and prepping limits the chance of that. This theory involves instrumental behaviour, which is pretty much is talking about how it's beneficial and harmful and weighing up that again, so obviously that will link to negatives and positives. Also effective behaviour also links with this, which is understanding how it will make the individual feel. Subjective norms are also involved, which could mean your peer group or family or anything really that's a social aspect that's influencing the ability to change. And also how it's perceived by you, so making sure that you can do it and it is definitely beneficial for you. All of these factors which influence the decision leads to the behavioural intention, which ultimately leads to the decision on whether or not to change. So those are basically the 3 theories that we'll be looking at. Scenario 1. John is 17 years old. He lives in Bedford in a very crowded city. John has done no physical exercise since he has left school. He is currently doing an apprenticeship in construction. John's diet is fairly healthy and well balanced. However, John smokes and does see the problem with smoking. He has even considered quitting. However, John's granddad suffered with lung cancer and passed away last year due to smoking. John believes in himself that he can quit. So initially, the first thought would be that we could kind of link this to the health belief model. This is because John has a cue for action. His granddad passed away due to not making the change, which was triggered by smoking. This could be used as motivation for John to quit. He also has self-efficiency, which means he believes in himself. Obviously, at the bottom, he says he thinks he can quit, which obviously will help, and is a factor in the health belief model. He also knows the threats of smoking due to his granddad passing away, so he does definitely see the perceived threat, and he knows that he needs to change in order for this to stop. However, the one thing he hasn't done yet is almost weighing up the positives and negatives of quitting, which is obviously a big part of that. Obviously, he needs to know that there are going to be some negatives of quitting. For example, he could be more stressed out at his apprenticeship or at home or something like that. There is definitely some negatives to making the change, whatever it is going to be, and in this case it's quitting smoking. One way he could make sure that he is looking at the positives and the negatives is by using a decision balance sheet for himself, which will help weigh up his options, and he'll be able to see almost right in front of him what's good and what's bad about quitting. So that's pretty much scenario 1 summed up, about the health belief model. It links with the scenario 1. Scenario 2. Amy is 18, she lives in Horsham with her parents. Amy is swimming at a very high standard for her club and county. Amy tends to over-prepare, think and plan before all her competitions. However, recently Amy's diet has been poor, as many of her friends outside of swimming eat poorly, and it's starting to affect her performance. She believes she should change her diet immediately, but she doesn't know how to go about it. So, the theory that I would link to this, or scenario 2 rather, would be Amy could be linked to theory of planned behaviour. This is because this theory is a result of behavioural intention and factors that change around it. For example, her subjective norms and her peers, and they're almost not pressuring her, but it's the normal thing for people to eat poorly in that group. If the norm is for you to eat bad, obviously then you're more likely to eat bad food. However, what benefits Amy is she understands that changing is beneficial and will result in better results. This links with the other factor, which is behavioural attitude. Finally, the final factor that will dictate behavioural intention is the perceived behavioural control, which is her self-belief, which is shown. She says she needs to change, and she's almost wanting to commit to it, which is good. So to summarise in this, essentially, Amy's subjective norms are influencing her not to change. To change her norms would generally be that eating healthy around her norm or her group could change the whole dynamic of the norm. So eating better in front of them will almost change the whole subjective norm, which will obviously in turn change the intention, which will overall make the decision to change. So that's pretty much scenario 2 for the theory of planned behaviour. Finally, scenario 3. Felix is a 32-year-old. He lives on his own in southeast London. Felix lives on his own, obviously, and currently does no exercise and is overweight. He doesn't understand that not doing exercise is bad, and he hasn't even considered participating in any activities or doing any exercise. However, Felix doesn't smoke and isn't a big drinker. So, I think for scenario 3, Felix can be linked to the trans-theoretical model of behavioural change. This is because the theory is almost a planned way that change happens, and it's the stages. Obviously it starts at pre-contemplation, which Felix is at now. He doesn't understand and doesn't even consider changing. In order for him to go to the next stage, which is contemplation, he would need to understand the threats of not exercising and realising what he is doing is unhealthy. Once he is at a contemplation, the next thing would be to make the decision to change, which would then lead to planning and preparation. Obviously with that you can do programs and stuff like that will get Felix into exercising, classes, gym sessions, all of that can be linked to the planning and prep. The final few stages are action, where he's actually doing the exercise, obviously through what we've planned and what the preparation has been. And finally, once all that has happened, the way to sustain it would probably be for Felix to stick to the guidelines for a regular person, which is 150 minutes a week. And that would be the trans-theoretical model of Felix currently.